If you're developing multifamily and you're trying to protect your pro forma from schedule drift and cost creep, then this episode is for you. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to give you a one-page tool called the Pro Forma to Design Translation Matrix. The point is simple. Translate underwriting assumptions into design priorities before the schematic design turns into a 100 option. Here's the plan. First, I'll show you the 5 underwriting signals that should drive design. Second, I'll show you how the matrix translates those signals into early design decisions. And third, I'll call out the most common ways teams accidentally design a beautiful mistake. The decision that we're trying to improve is this. What design priorities protect the pro forma? And what do we trade when something changes? If that decision is fuzzy, schematic design turns into option soup. And option soup is where variance is born. The deal drifts a little bit and then a little bit more. And you only realize it after you've spent weeks drawing and redrawing. Here's 2 simple definitions so we stay grounded. The pro forma is how the building makes money. Architecture is how the building is actually built. The gap between those is where unpredictability shows up in cost, schedule, and outcomes. Here are the stakes when that gap isn't managed. One schedule drift becomes carry cost, interest, taxes, overhead, while you're not collecting rent. 2, lease-up drag forces confessions and creates NOI leakage when the product misses the market. 3, late redesign and value engineering often become value destruction, cutting what drives revenue while keeping complexity. Here's a quick reality check example. If you have 150 units at $2,200 a month, 1 month of delay is about $330,000 in gross rent that you can't collect. Now that's not a perfect NOI calculation. It's just a clean way to feel the scale. This is the predictability failure pattern. Underwriting assumptions don't become design guardrails. Options multiply. Rework shows up later as coordination, alignment, or just one more round. And most teams don't lose the pro forma in one big decision. They lose it in 10 small, reasonable decisions. So here's the fix. The pro forma to the design translation matrix, or the PFDTM, for all of you that love your acronyms. Here's what it does straightforward. It extracts the 5 underwriting signals that matter the most. It translates each into an early design decision, and it defines the earliest lock point when it has to be decided. And it forces the team to name watchouts and trade rules so changes don't happen accidentally. Here's the matrix. As you can see, section A is the 5 underwriting signals. We're not trying to architect the spreadsheet. We're trying to protect the assumptions the lender and equity are underwriting. So signal 1 is this revenue model. This is your rents, your premiums, and your ancillary incomes. Signal 2 is the yield or your efficiency targets. So this is your unit count and how much area actually produces rent. Signal 3 are your hard cost guardrails. What levers spike costs? Signal 4 are your schedule constraints. So this is things like your permit path, your start date, your first move in, your stabilization. Signal 5 is your lease-up strategy. So this is your absorption assumptions and your cost in your comp set positioning. Now, section B is the translation matrix. We're going to look at one row because it shows the logic. Let's take parking. If the deal assumes a certain parking ratio and the jurisdiction pushes you towards a specific solution, then the design decision is the parking type. Is it surface parking? Is it tuck under? Is it podium? Is it structured? The earliest lock point of these is usually pre-schematic design, because if it changes later, massing and structure have to reset in order to accommodate it. The watch out is cost and schedule spike. And the trade rule might be we trade unit count assumptions before we trade parking type. So let's go back to the 5 signals, because this is your backbone. So the first one is the revenue model. So this is what you're selling and what gets premiums. 2 is your yield efficiency. How much of the building produces rent or income? 3 is the hard cost guardrails. So this is the cost ceiling and the real cost drivers of all of the elements that start to spike those costs. 4 are your schedule constraints, the timeline, the long leads, and the jurisdiction risk. And that lease-up strategy, this is your absorption rate, your expected absorption rate, your pre-sales, your comps, and your positioning in the market. Now here's the rule. If an assumption can't be mapped to a design decision, it isn't protected. So the mapping logic is one sentence: the assumption, the decision, the lock point, the watchouts, and the trade rule. And the one question you keep asking is, if we change this, what breaks and what are we willing to trade instead? Also, keep the matrix to 6 to 10 rows. If it grows beyond that, it's not a better tool. It's a sign that your priorities aren't clear. So here's why the parking example matters. Parking and structure are not aesthetics. They're underwriting levers. When the lock point is pre-schematic design, that's a signal. Treat it as a controlled decision, because if you wait, you pay in redesign, cost, and schedule. That's the whole point of this matrix. It makes hidden underwriting dependencies visible early when changes are still cheap. Now, if you only watch 3 things, watch these 3. The first one is yield drift. This is circulation creep and inefficient layouts that quietly reduce revenue capacity. This is when your design, your architect shows you this phenomenal great game room that you know is going to drive up occupancy and help with absorption. But instead of asking him to tighten up the rest of the inefficiencies or the rest of the non-rentable in order to keep your target, you let it slide. So 2, your parking and your structure creep. Late type changes that reset the building. In our parking example, you can see that if that parking type has to change, it causes havoc to the whole design and it recreates the entire, you go back to pre-design, or you go back to at least schematic design to figure out how the rest of this thing is going to meet your other priorities. And the last one is amenity bloat. So this is features that don't move rents or absorption, but add cost and complexity. I think of this in a lot of ways like really nice, expensive siding. We all know that you get what you pay for, and you may get a better warranty, you may get higher longevity, and you may get a better energy efficient siding if you mark up that cost. But at the same time, you have to realize what you're willing to trade in order to get that. And the question is if that siding is at the top of a 10-story building, is it worth paying that pretty penny for siding that really isn't even visible to the tenants and to the people on the streets? Or should that money go to something that produces revenue or increases absorption? Mitigation is simple. Translate things early, trade consciously, and protect the assumptions that matter. Here's how you run this in one meeting. The first 5 minutes, you confirm your deal targets, your mix, your rents, your timelines, your hard cost guardrails. The next 15 minutes, you identify the top 3 value drivers. So the things that must be protected at all costs. The next 20 minutes, you map the cost and the schedule sensitivities, things like parking, structure, envelope, MEP, jurisdictional constraints, energy code requirements. The next 15 minutes, you set the trade rules. This is what you're going to trade before you touch those priorities. These are the things that you're willing to negotiate or navigate, and your priorities remain the non-negotiables. The last 5 minutes, you assign owners and publish the matrix as a source of truth. This is when you're assigning owners, think of the person that when those schematic design drawings are handed over to your team, they're the ones that are responsible for making sure that this matrix is out, that the priorities are written down, that everyone is on the same page as to what we're looking for in this plan set. The output is simple, 6 to 10 rows plus a ranked top 5 priority stacked. So now let's recap. We want to translate underwriting into design priorities early. Keep it to 6 to 10 rows and rank a top 5 priority stack. Use trade rules so 10 small reasonable decisions don't drift the deal. In the next episode, we're going to define done early. So we're talking budget, schedule, and yield. And we're going to lock the 3 non-negotiables that keep the team aligned when pressure shows up. We'll see you there.